Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SLSO Stories live event. These virtual events let us go deep with musicians and experts on a specific topic. I'm Tim Munro, creative partner with the SLSO. Today, we're getting an inside look at the 43-year-long and strong partnership between the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra and Opera Theatre of St. Louis. But first, a housekeeping thing, please ask questions using the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Make sure your message is set to panelists and attendees. These conversations are so much more fun when we have a kind of engagement from you out there in digital land. And I will absolutely get to as many questions and comments as I can throughout this hour. And special thanks to the SLSO's 2021-2022 SLSO Stories live sponsor, Washington University Physicians. And I'm delighted to welcome our three amazing guests, two from the Opera Theatre of St. Louis, Daniela Candillari, Principal Conductor, and Andrew Jorgensen, General Director, along with the SLSO's President and CEO, Marie-Hélène Bernard. Welcome to all of you.
Good afternoon.
And thank you for taking this time. I want to start actually with you, Daniela, since you just last night did the dress rehearsal for your first production as principal conductor. So how does it feel? You know, where are you in that kind of process of like, you've put the finishing touches and now you just have to take the stage?
Yeah, thank you. That's a really, really good question. I feel like, so last night we had our first dress rehearsal. Tomorrow we have one more, and then we open on Saturday. And I feel what's really important in these rehearsals is that we continue growing and that we keep on putting finishing touches. I think even once we open the show, the work is not done. I think every performance offers new opportunities to bring things out, new opportunities to connect in a different way. And that's the beauty of opera, and that's the beauty of working with such a fantastic orchestra as the St. Louis Symphony, and working with the incredible cast we have on stage, that everybody is so in tune to each other, and this true partnership comes along between the stage and the pit.
Oh, that's so beautifully said, and really brings to life this sense of live opera as a living art form. And I think we're going to return to that again and again in this hour. But also, for those of you who maybe are new to you, Daniela, this is your first season as principal conductor. Mm-hmm. What does that role mean? Like, what does it mean in the context of the organization, and what does it mean to you?
So to me, it's, first of all, it's an incredible honor. It sort of shows trust from our leadership. It shows trust from the musicians of the symphony, that we can embark on this partnership and we can find common language, and we can sort of have continuity with any company that once starts working and that once starts developing a partnership. I think that growth and that mutual respect and mutual language and finding that is incredibly important. And so, first of all, this is an honor, and I'm truly grateful and thankful to have this trust of the administration, of the leadership, and of the musicians. And then I think it also, in terms of musical values, I think it informs how we shape music, what values are important, what do I bring to the table. Every conductor comes with a very different experience. My experience was that of a pianist. In some sort of past teenage life, I was a singer for a very, very short time, but we do not need to talk about that. But I think every conductor brings a different life experience, a different musical experience, a different outlook and sort of philosophy on the music. So I think sort of having the chance to start those conversations is incredibly important.
That's so wonderful. And I think all the audience is going to really enjoy that ongoing conversation. That'd be wonderful. Andrew, I want to turn to you, and I just feel like from the outside, OTSL is in such robust, rude health, but yet you come out of this crazy time. What are some of the things that you feel like most proud of in kind of coming through this pandemic period?
Oh, what a great question. Thank you for that. Let me first start by saying thanks to you, Tim, for having us this afternoon. Thanks to Daniela for taking time out of a very busy rehearsal week. And thanks to Marie-Hélène. I think I think this audience knows what a great leader the SLSO has in Marie-Hélène. But I can tell you what a great partner I have. I'm still learning how to be a general director across 4 rather eventful years. And I've been really fortunate to have a senior colleague in Marie-Hélène who has been unbelievably supportive across.
Not too senior.
More experience.
I'm older, but you're a very wise man too. So,
what a great question. We were just having a staff meeting this morning and reflecting. In March of 2020, we told our full-time annual staff that we were going to go home and work remotely for 2 weeks, which I think is where we all thought we were in March of 2020. We pivoted to digital. We figured out how to compensate every single member of our festival season company in 2020, thanks to the leadership of our board and the incredible generosity of our supporters. We figured out, with the partnership of the Symphony and Webster University, how to build an opera house on an asphalt parking lot in the summer of 2021. And with Mother Nature's cooperation, we didn't get rained out a single time in a 4 opera season.
Wow.
We were able to commission new work, which is how we were able to bring Daniela to Opera Theater in 21. We've been able to renew and add to our artistic leadership team during this time. And we're now back in the theater. And we've been saying that it's a normal season, but I think there's no such thing as normal now. COVID, audience buying patterns, changes in the way that we interact with each other, the kinds of things that we're doing to make sure that we are really respecting and supporting the humans who work in our organizations. Muscle memory doesn't cut it anymore. And so being back in the theater is a return, but it's also crafting a new normal. That's a long way of saying I'm proud of the way our company has responded to the last 3 years. And I think that Saturday evening, when we open Carmen and have a spectacular performance back on the stage of our theater, will be a magnificent and maybe even miraculous homecoming.
I mean, I immediately have to ask you, like, what is the importance of this art form in a post-pandemic time? I want to ask all 3 of you this question. We may as well jump into it, since you're hinting that there is no really new normal, or there is a new normal, but it is a changed world. What are you looking for now?
Is that to me to start?
Why don't we start with you, Andrew, since you sort of like kind of got us there in a certain way?
I think the first thing to say is that we can never again take for granted the joy and the specialness of coming together in large groups to experience live art together. We all, I think, can have a renewed joy, whether it's a happy story or a sad story. There's something special about coming together and hearing and experiencing live art together. And I, for one, am seeing that as a privilege every time I get to experience live art once again. But I think opera is the original multimedia art form. Opera is incredibly complicated. It's a symphony, it's singers, it's actors, it's set designers and stagehands, and hundreds of people in hundreds of different skills. Every time we make a single performance come to life. At Opera Theater on any given evening, we have as many as 150 people working with us and working for us who make that performance come to life. And we need all of them to make a performance happen. And so that it happens at all is extraordinary. And I think that range of artistic options gives us the possibility to experience the world deeply and in a way that I don't know that any other art form offers us that chance. And so as we come through the pandemic, it's not just the new works, though certainly I'm incredibly proud that our company has a commitment to and will continue to produce new works that really speak to our current world. And certainly this year, there are two of them that are more resonant than we could ever have imagined. But even as we revisit the classics, finding meaning in these works and experiencing that shared emotional journey in a group together, that's special every single time.
I think, Tim, I would add to, it's beautifully said, Andrew, two things that come to mind. If I think of the ways that Andrew or Daniela or I came to this work, I think while we came from different places with different backgrounds and with that we all share a visceral need to share the power of music and to create access to music, which is so important to the work we do. So we not only focus as partners on creating new experiences out of existing repertoire and new repertoire, but we're really thinking ahead of what's the future experiences in opera and what are those stories, because opera is about also the text and the story, and we see all of us music as storytelling, but it's like you take it to a next level. And how do you continue humanity, the connection from where we come from to where we are? I find this extremely powerful in the work we do. And I think we come with this with an accepting that we have a lot to learn, and then from society and from experiences. I think I can't speak for Daniela and Andrew, but from my perspective is I'm very eager to shape the future of our respective industries of opera and our symphonic orchestra in ways that are that you can't imagine today. So, I don't like to talk about the new normal or the regular or the this or that, because I think in the end, I think the exploration of what we do is so exciting and so fantastic. And I would say St. Louis audiences are extremely deeply loyal. And I feel that confidence and trust in our work, that we're given the opportunity to truly reimagine and recreate in ways that is not done in anywhere in this country. The last thing I would mention, going back to Daniela's role, of course, as conductor and the person who keeps the orchestra, and then the liaison between our orchestra and the way we, Andrew and I, think of these seasons. But I think the way she envisions her relationship with the orchestra is a very it's transformative. It, like, she truly sees herself as a partner to the orchestra, and having watched her in many performances and in her work, it's very different. And I really appreciate the intelligence with which she's building that trust and that partnership with musicians, where it's no longer them sitting back and just executing on a vision, and it's truly feeding into what her artistic vision of a work can be and what other guest conductors bring to the table. So I think I'm very excited. And for me, it's a new era, not to say that what came before us is not good, but that's what keeps me going every day, is how we rethink the way we approach our work. And anyway, so that's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Marie-Hélène. That was, you just got me verklempt. So thank you.
There are a couple of things, Marie-Hélène, you touched on that I want to come back to. One is access, but talking particularly about partnerships and trust. I mean, all three of you are touching on that in various ways. Daniela, does music making feel different now? How much music making did you do during the pandemic times?
So during the pandemic, that's a really, really good question. So some might know that my husband is a musician. He's a bass trombone player, and as Andrew said, everybody closed offices for 2 weeks. We thought our productions got postponed that he and I were working on separately, and we thought we were going to go to Michigan to visit his family and stay there for about 2 weeks and sort of catch up on sleep, because it's been a really busy season for both of us. And I had all these scores that I wanted to learn. And the first 2 weeks, or about 6 weeks, I think, into the pandemic, I was pretty adamant about my schedule and about my routine. I kept on studying. I kept on doing my daily exercises. I sort of kept a schedule as if I was on a mini school break that was just lasting a little bit longer. But then there was a big cancellation that when that happened, I just thought, oh, what am I doing this for? I mean, if you can't make music with people around you, then what's the point? And also for both of us, it was somehow difficult to start making music not knowing what the end goal was. Every time we practice, of course, it's for improvement of ourselves, and it's with a specific goal in mind, to prepare ourselves for a performance, to prepare ourselves for a recording, whatever. But with that sort of not really being even on a deadline that we could anticipate, the motivation to do that was really difficult. So we ended up playing 1 or 2 recitals for friends and family that were streamed, but that was about it. And then about 3 months into the pandemic, I actually started doing something completely different. I started making pottery. I took lessons from a potter in town, and in a really, really odd way, that turned out to be the musical work that I needed to do. Because it had so much to do with awareness, with real listening and real attention. Also philosophically, it had to do a little bit more with putting pressure where you know the pressure is needed, letting go when you know it's needed. And in some ways, I found so many parallels between pottery making and music making that then a year later, when the first engagement started coming back, I thought that was the most valuable experience I actually could have had. Not to mention that there is something extremely meditative in both forms, in pottery and also in studying music, not so much in the physical act of conducting, but in studying music. There's incredible calm and meditative quality to that I think is needed in order to understand and comprehend pieces and create something. So in terms of music making specifically, not much was done, but in other eras of life, a lot of things were done that actually helped the music making then that came.
I mean, do you feel like you're coming back with new ears or a gentler
Yes.
touch or a stronger,
Yes, absolutely. And, it was just, there was also somehow a visual connection between music that started developing in those moments where I was listening to a piece of music and I thought, oh, this could be the sculpture. This is how that music can be shaped. And it was really interesting. I can't pinpoint yet how that influences my music making right now, but I hear things differently. And I also feel it's sort of, I think that resting period, none of us were resting during the pandemic. It was not a vacation for any of us. But I think the ability to learn how to sit in silence and observe things and take them in and meditate and then reflect and go on, I think that opened up a lot of different channels in terms of hearing music and in terms of the colors that come, and also understanding maybe how music was created or how a specific piece was created.
It's
so beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to pick up on this because I think one of the values of that time in a pandemic, that reflection and approaching our work with a slightly different pace, I think in some ways, while it created anxiety and was very beneficial. And I'm afraid now that we lost the essence of that stillness that we experienced at the beginning of the pandemic, which I found extremely fruitful when it comes to the way we think about our work, whether it's an administration or music performance. And right now I feel there's an intensity to all of us having returned and carrying on with that is, I'm afraid to lose that sense of, it's hard to describe, and Andrew, I'm sure you can connect to this, is that space for thinking, reflection that was such a welcome break when the pandemic hit. And yet now that I'm afraid we're kind of losing. And I don't know how to capture again that. It's like as if you grab it in a bottle, that stillness that I thought was so, so supportive of that creativity we all need.
Marie-Hélène, that resonates so deeply. A couple of years ago, Opera Theater participated in an effort with the Wallace Foundation. And the Wallace Foundation interviewed hundreds of legacy arts organization executive directors, general directors, CEOs, symphonies, opera companies, ballets, well, theater companies. The number one concern that these leaders expressed wasn't fundraising, it wasn't managing artists, it wasn't ticket sales. The number one concern was not having time to think, not having time to process and to reflect about really what the good answers might be for the future of our institutions. And I think the pandemic gave us all a hard stop, and then it forced us to think about everything differently. And the confluence of those two things forced new thinking in a business that is so often governed by muscle memory. I feel it even now as we move back into the theater. About half of our staff are new since the last time we were in the theater, and the muscle memory that we don't have and that we're recreating as we find our way back to, quote unquote, the way things work around here. And to add one more thing to that, we've just finished a new strategic plan at Opera Theater that, amusingly enough, we had begun in January of 2020 with the hope of finishing it by September of 2020. Of course, that didn't happen, but instead of pushing ahead, we went on what we called a learning journey. And we talked with literally hundreds of people connected to the institution, not connected to the institution. What's the purpose of an institution like ours, and how can we be of greater service both to the opera world that we're part of and to the St. Louis community that we serve? And I don't think we would have had the kind of reflection or the kind of new clarified strategic direction that we have. It's a hard silver lining to find, but it absolutely is better thinking because of such an incredible change in the way that we were working and living.
Can you touch on a couple of things if you're able to, like top line elements of that plan? Like what are you coming out of that looking to the future? I want to sort of slowly move towards the present and the future. Like,
I'd love to, and it's simple. Opera Theater has always had a commitment to young singers. We're proud to say that in any given year, more than 100 singers on the roster of the Metropolitan Opera had their first professional engagement at Opera Theater of St. Louis. We want to own that we are a portal into the opera world, and that we are an incubator for the future of opera, not just with young singers, but with our stagehands, with our artisans, our backstage artists, with our leadership, with our administration. How can we be an incubator for a vibrant future of opera? We launched our Clayco Future Leaders Fellowship. Which brings BIPOC administrators, aspiring administrators into our administration to help launch careers. We've begun to provide dollars so that we can provide housing for members of our stage crews so that we can recruit nationally and more equitably into those jobs to launch people into those spaces. We want to own that we are an incubator for the future of this art form, with the people and with the art that the future will be. And as we do that, we want to lean more deeply, Tim, into what it means to be of service to St. Louis. How can we use opera? How can we use an art form that convenes people to convene our community? How can we do that in our season? And how can we also do that during more of the rest of the year, showing up in more parts of St. Louis, making more noise, more music, and convening more conversation, which is something that opera, through storytelling, has a unique power to do. Those are the two really important, I think, intellectual thrusts of the plan. And it's exciting to see some of that already coming to fruition as this season comes to the stage.
That's beautifully said. And I know that a lot of those things are in alignment with the SLSO's kind of looking forward? I mean, do you see Marie-Hélène like a kind of Venn diagram kinship?
It's in our previous plan, which wrapped up in December of 21, the concept of an artistic organization as creative incubator lab was very much at the center of everything we did for similar reasons. The SLSO has launched so many careers. We've been active commissioners for, over 50 years. Also in the space of media, have really brought a lot of new ways to think about the media as support to the work we do. But all of this together comes back to looking at how do we transform, how we bring experiences to a society that's really changing fast here in St. Louis and beyond, right? Because our role goes well beyond our region. And how do you create new audiences from the concept of the symphony as part of your life cycle? Like the idea of, I love this idea of the music as part of your life cycle, that at every time and every step of your life, Opera Theater or the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra is there for you. That is what drove our programming and our concert experiences during the pandemic. The only thing we were focused on is for the community to know that we were there for them as educator, as connector, as performer, and as educator. And those four components of performer, commissioner, creator, educator, and connector are essential to the foundation of our thinking about the future, and also how we're going to transform Powell Hall as a music center so that we can bring that nimbleness of experience in music, because symphonic music is one aspect of what we do, but there's so many variation around the life of an orchestra. So that really touches on what Andrew advanced in terms of their thinking about their future.
All right, I want to go, this is so wonderful, but I want to go from really zoomed right out to really zoomed right in and to like the here and now and the this week. Daniela, I know that you have a very, very deep and long relationship with this opera that is accidentally your first opera with Opera Theater of St. Louis as the principal conductor. So can you take us into the 5-year-old Daniela's first experience with Carmen and what this opera means to you?
It was, to say it was magical might sound a little bit naive, but it truly was. My grandmother used to sing Carmen, and I felt that the opera house for me was my home. It was my living room. It was a place where I would go to sort of get inspired, to see new things, to meet new people, to connect with humans, with the human emotions and so on. And when I saw Carmen for the first time, the death of Carmen made no sense to me. I kept on thinking they must be going through so many singers. I mean, I
That's
really,
amazing.
really, truly believe that everything I saw on that stage was happening in real life. That was the story. Why that was chosen as my first opera is beyond me. I mentioned this somewhere. My grandmother took me when I was 8 to see Traviata, and we only stayed until Act 2. And she said, you should not see the end because she dies. And I thought, well, I mean, we're past that. I already had my experience. But there is such vitality in the music. There is such freshness and newness to the music, even though it was written 150 years ago. And I think that really captivated me. The other thing with the National Theater where I grew up, this was Serbian National Theater in Novi Sad. They used to do all of the operas in Serbian language. So first time I saw Carmen, it was in Serbian. I actually learned the Banera in Serbian for the first time. And that whole experience was so natural and normal that I never once doubted that this piece was not written yesterday, that it wasn't, the composer maybe wasn't living a street down from us, and that maybe I might meet some of these people. I mean, it was sort of the best experience that I think anyone can have. And then, of course, throughout my life, once I started working as a coach, and then as chorus master and then assistant conductor, I worked on Carmen in all of these facets. And it was just fascinating, again, getting to know the piece on a much more intimate level every single time I delved into it. Including now conducting my first production of it.
This is your first production
This is my first production as a conductor. Yeah.
Wow,
yeah.
But it's like an old friend. It's like somebody that you've known for so long.
Exactly. But that's the beauty of it. I mean, I know the opera by memory. Of course, we do it in English translation. So there was an additional language learning of the text, and sort of seeing how do the tempi need to adjust, how do the recits need to adjust, because they're so closely connected to each other. But you find new things every single time. Every single time you open the score, there's that, and why is it there, and how does it connect to everything else that's happening throughout the opera?
Oh, that's lovely. The thought of that you saw it first in a language of the people who spoke in the community makes me think about doing it in English here and now. I mean, is that something that, because obviously that's what you will be doing with Opera Theatre of St. Louis, are you trying to look for a way to communicate this text to audiences in 2022?
So what Rodula Gaetano, our stage director for Carmen, and I have done when we started talking about this production was actually look at the translation that was already commissioned, and then we started adjusting it for 2022 for our current time, our current culture, the way that we express ourselves. And the beauty of this production, furthermore, was that with the principals from the first day of music rehearsals, we said what you see is on page is still up for debate and discussion. If we find a better way of saying something that's going to convey the emotion and tell the story, we have sort of carte blanche to do that. So we did that, and it was really fantastic. And this is sort of incredible ensemble bonding where and collaboration that comes from that, where every single principal came up and said, well, how do you feel about my character actually saying this? And if it was justified and we all felt yes, then absolutely go ahead and do that. If it's going to, I mean, I think theater does that very often.
Yeah.
They get the text, they do table reads, and they adjust as to what the story needs. And I feel doing translations in English, we actually have a luxury in that we can adjust languages, and we can do that, and we can make pieces even more relevant and more contemporary sounding, and not sort of a distant memory of something.
Well, and also yeah, sorry, Andrew. I'm so excited. It's just like so interesting.
I have to add to that. When I came to opera theater in 2018, I had it in the back of my mind that I was fully convinced that I wanted to change the language tradition at opera theater.
Oh, interesting.
I'm not sure I said that in the interview process. If I had done so, I probably wouldn't be here with you now. I was fully convinced that this was a quaint tradition that needed to change. And then I got here, and in 2019, I sat through each performance of The Marriage of Figaro. And I'm certain that audiences laugh louder and they cry harder, and that this notion of immediacy and of accessibility that Daniela is talking about, I was shocked last night at Carmen's death at the end of the opera, and I've seen this work 150 times. There is something about hearing it in a language where you don't need the titles that makes this incredibly powerful and accessible. And to listen to the team talk, as Daniela is describing, about word choice. We've had incredibly challenging conversations in the last few weeks about the word gypsy. That's a really troublesome word today that we don't really want to be using. But the word traveler doesn't really fit into what Bizet gave us. Daniela and Rodula have led the team through really challenging conversations about how we make these concepts and this text fit, make it appropriate, make it meaningful, and make it resonate for this audience on Saturday evening. Daniela, do you want to add to that? It's been a fascinating conversation.
It super is, but what I actually also wanted to to mention, Andrew, you said that the death of Carmen was really shocking. And Rodula and I were speaking recently at a different event. And the first time that we saw death happen in rehearsal, again, I've seen Carmen so many times now. I've been involved with it in so many different ways and facets. But I actually started crying. And I think there is the way that it's staged. I'm not going to give anything away, but just how it happens and what Carmen represents throughout this entire opera, the character and Sarah Mesco as our Carmen. It's sort of when she dies as if hope was killed. It's quite amazing. It's sort of amazing in a really moving and really emotional way. Yeah, so I'm glad it resonated with you, Andrew, because again, we know this piece and we know what's going to happen. It's not like there is hope they might figure it out and sail off with this Camille.
Daniela, I hope that there are a bunch of 5-year-olds who go to see this and they think it was written yesterday by someone down the street.
Let's say
I really hope that
10
too.
years old. 10 years old.
10 years old, exactly. Wouldn't maybe put a
5-year-old. 5 is just a little young. 10,
Exactly.
12, maybe 13. Yeah. But it's an
Figures.
interesting comment, because I think what we need in our industry to step away from thinking of core works that, we always have to perform for the person who hears it for the first time. And for us, it's always to approach the core repertoire as new, because you're right, Andrew and Daniela, and Tim, that some of these works will be heard for the first time. And I remember years ago when I came to this field, and one of my mentors said, never forget that your orchestra, your opera will perform this work, and there's going to be several people in that house for whom it's a first time. So what is so unique about what you're doing that it will make a lasting impression, and that's why we fall in love. And so that's why when we think of shaping a musical arc of engagement, that we never want to neglect the existing works, and we're creating new works and new experiences because we value both, and it's because humanity is the continuous thread, right? So we may dress differently today, but I strongly believe that people today are people, right? So as we're still, the human nature is human nature. We keep making the same mistakes. Look at what the world is doing right now. It's a repeat of previous conflicts and previous issues. That said, I think that's the beauty of it, to hear a work that you've known and heard many times, and to listen to it with new eyes and new ears in case of the opera.
Well said.
Exactly. And yeah, so beautifully said. And I also think, to add to that, I think we can only get to those places in sort of personal discovery and creativity if we have the time once in a while to sit in silence and really come to works with fresh ears. It's on to us to bring this new version to the people who may be hearing it for the first time, and it's on to us to make it sound fresh and not just a routine, not just the thing that we're going through, not just emotions.
And you're going to have 8 Carmens coming up, performances, and each one of them will be unique,
different,
and
exactly.
Different, and there will be things. And the thing in our business is sometimes we experience magic that in ways we can't explain how, and it's and then you have to try not to try to recreate that same magic, because it can never be the same.
And Marie-Hélène, that's one of the things I'm most excited about in Daniela's new role at Opera Theater. We've talked about, of course, she's responsible for, the administration of music, the music staff, the chorus master, the versions, the translations, the cuts, the relationship with the orchestra. But it's that musical journey she alluded to earlier in the conversations, Marie-Hélène, that you and I were able to have with the players as we went through the journey of picking a musical leader. One of the things that we talked about is that what makes opera special for the players is that, with the exception of a musical leader like Stefan, who of course we get to see all the time, and thank goodness for that, in a symphony week, it's usually a very expedited process. And that the opportunity of a long opera run gives us the opportunity for more exploration, especially with works that maybe we don't know, or different, maybe not more, different exploration
Yeah.
that is often possible in an expedited time frame.
Right.
And so I'm excited to hear what the SLSO and Daniela's first Carmen sound like on Saturday evening, and what our 8th Carmen sounds like 5 weeks from now.
Right.
And then to see that grow over the course of years. We've just announced Daniela conducts Tosca next year.
Right.
And it's that same journey of work that the orchestra won't have seen in 20 years. So will be actually probably new for many of the people in the space.
Yeah.
That's a creative journey that I feel so privileged to watch Daniela and the orchestra embark on.
Yep. And Tosca was my first opera as a child that I saw.
Oh.
I met. I got on a bus from Montreal and I went to the Met with my brother, and I was 12, he was 14. We were together on a bus from Montreal to New York. I don't know how my mother let us go to New York on our own. And we stayed at the hotel, which was, it's been renovated since, but it's famous. There were rats all over, and it was terrible. But I will never forget the experience at the Met, sitting in the top row. And we were so high up that actually there was a part where she jumps, and then Mario, and then the cushions were going up. I mean, this was a long time ago, but it was an amazing experience. And to this day, it's one of my favorite because it kind of strikes that special first experience. And I think those are so special.
Mm-hmm.
I want to, Andrew did a nice pivot, and Daniela, I want to ask you about the relationship between a conductor and an orchestra in the opera house. Like, you're working with an orchestra that, as Andrew mentions, plays year round in Powell Hall. What is that? How is that relationship working with them in a pit?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one thing that I wanted to sort of footnote to what Andrew was saying is, for instance, with Carmen, I think there is a mix of people within the symphony that have played it, and there's a mix of people that are playing it now for the first time. Whereas with Tosca, that number might be a little bit smaller. And so what I think my role is actually meeting the people where they are. The people who have played Carmen for 5-6 times, maybe not at OTSL, but in different places as well. They have their own tradition with it. They have their way of playing it. The people that are new to it, as am I as a conductor, we have our own views and we think how things go. And so the role of a conductor is really to merge these two worlds, vision, and into one sound, essentially. And I think within symphony orchestra, working in an opera house, I think it's sort of like putting on a different glove. There's much more flexibility. There's a lot of flexibility needed in symphonic repertoire. But there's even more flexibility needed in operatic repertoire. And it has to do with playing recits. It has to do with reacting to different singers. It has to do with just reacting, again, to different conductors. Regular opera house sees who knows how many conductors during the season. And even here for our festival season, we have four conductors for all of the 4 operas. So it's the reaction to new people. It's reacting to things that happen on stage immediately. And that, I think, always infuses the orchestra with excitement. Not every performance, as we said, is going to be the same. Yesterday, just a small thing, there is one scene that starts with a scream off stage. I was not hearing the scream, and so we just had to react and go immediately. And sort of it's finding that balance and figuring out who is going to take the lead when. Is it the orchestra, is it the stage, and vice versa. But I think flexibility creates then also a fantastic symphonic orchestra. St. Louis Symphony is already a fantastic orchestra, but I think putting this extra layer helps everyone then bring that different language to symphonic world as well.
And what I love about the festival at Opera Theater is the center stage, because the orchestra is split in 2 separate groups. So half of the orchestra does 2 of the operas and the other half, the 2 others. But at the end, at center stage, which I think is June 21st, is the full orchestra coming together in support of those artists. So to go back to Andrew's comment about that passion and commitment to emerging talent. And that's the one time where the orchestra gets to be really on the same stage with singers and truly be accompanists at their ultimate, most brilliant way. And that's all, for me, it's one of the most rewarding aspects of the festival seasons, where you get to hear them all. After hearing all the 4 operas, then you get to hear the talents. And as an arts administrator, it's always exciting to hear new talent and say, you know, and in the past and in the future, we've hired, you know, singers in the program, Gerdine artists and others to come and join us on the stage here at Powell Hall. So I love that sense of continuity that we create.
It's sort of the perfect mission moment at center stage.
Yeah.
And I'd be remiss, Marie-Hélène, not to say, you know, I think it was 1978 was the first year of this partnership. It's not unique in the world, but it's close to unique in the world. The Vienna Philharmonic plays in the pit at the Vienna State Opera. We have the best opera orchestra of any festival company in this country, and one of the best orchestras of any opera company anywhere. And an opera company can only be as good as the orchestra who starts its music. And so our company is successful because we're starting with an extraordinary orchestra that can play anything, that can adapt to anything, that can show the flexibility Daniela is asking for. It's a true gift for our community, and I hope that our community appreciates how rare and how special this partnership is, and how much better it makes the art that we are able to produce together every year.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Danielle, I notice you grinning from ear to ear as Andrew's talking about that. I mean, does it feel like you have a Rolls Royce in the pit?
Oh my God, yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's such a wonderfully reactive orchestra, and it just, in one way, it feels like we've been, you know, musical friends for years, and in other ways, I know that I just started. So it's really, really fresh, but there's also familiarity, and it feels like we've been on this journey for somehow longer than we have been, which is really, really exciting.
Oh, that's so great. So before we finish, Andrew, we haven't talked about any of the other operas on this season, and I noticed you referred to them as strikingly relevant. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about, you hinted at the beginning about the sort of accidental relevance.
Yeah. This is a season that came together differently than any other season. Each of these 4 works was postponed because of the pandemic. Carmen was originally meant for 2020. The Magic Flute was originally meant for 2021. 2 great classics that we get to open with. But also 2 world premieres this year. Awakenings was originally meant for 2020, and Harvey Milk for 2021. Awakenings is the Oliver Sacks story of the sleeping sickness and these patients who had suffered from the sleeping sickness pandemic, and who Dr. Sacks was able to awaken through his extraordinary medical efforts. We commissioned that in 2018, having no idea that we would have come through this period. Tobias Picker, the composer, told me last week he'd always wanted to write something that was relevant to current events. He just didn't want to get there this way. Yeah. And it's not actually more depressing on the far side of a pandemic. On the contrary, I think it's actually more heartwarming, more hopeful, and more meaningful, having lived through this. In the same way, Harvey Milk, we commissioned this renewed version of Harvey Milk. It's not a world premiere. It was done for the first time in 1995, but the composer Stuart Wallace and the librettist Michael Corey have completely rebuilt the opera. So it's a world premiere of a new version. We commissioned that in 2019. To be doing Harvey Milk, the story of this extraordinary civil rights leader in St. Louis in June, in Pride Month, I think is about the most important thing we can be doing right now. And we don't need to look that far past the very front page. to know that an opera about protecting and expanding civil rights is unbelievably important right now. As an out person, I am extraordinarily proud that we can produce Harvey Milk and that our community will stand up and support that. That's a story which is more important now than ever. And the art is brilliant too. It's that moment where art and meaning really come together in a synergistic way, one advancing the other.
So beautifully said. You leave me speechless. You hinted also that looking forward, that the 2023 season has been announced. And I do notice a very familiar SLSO name on the bill, which is Gemma New.
Yes, Gemma was going to conduct. I was able to go. Marie-Hélène, was it the Elgar Enigma Variations?
Yeah, it was a while back. It was
she conducted on the opening night. She conducted Elgar on the opening night.
I think it was Shahrazad. I don't remember, but yes, I remember.
She conducted opening night in 2018. And I wrote to you that night and said,
yes, I remember.
Can you connect me to her agent? And we invited Gemma that day to come to Opera Theater in 2020 for Susanna. Of course, Susanna was postponed. Gemma will finally come to make her Opera Theater debut in 23. Susanna. Daniela conducts Tosca back on our stage for the first time, Daniela, in I think 20 years, something like so. 20 years, which is just extraordinary. Così fan tutte in a beautiful production with a really exciting young cast, all singers, I think on the verge of major careers. And a world premiere of a new version of Scott Joplin's Tremonisha that Damien Sneed and Karen Chilton have reimagined in what will be a world premiere of a 100-year-old opera. Rounding out that season, as in this season, center stage concert and what is our now becoming traditional concert celebrating Black Music Month. That'll be a great season. This will be a great season. There's lots to look forward to.
Well, what a beautiful note to end on. We've talked a lot about partnerships and trust, about being the kind of breeding ground of new things. And it just seems like the organizations are doing incredible work together. So thank you so much. It's been wonderful to spend time with you today, all three of you guys. I want to thank you guys, Daniela, Andrew and Marie-Hélène once more. And I want to thank the Stewart Family Foundation and Washington University Physicians for their support. And thank you all for joining in, watching and commenting. And let's do the Zoom thing and wave bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
See you at the opera.